Hi, I'm Dan Kubisky with the International Community of the U.S. Society of Professional Journalists. 5 years ago, Beijing imposed a national security law on Hong Kong. The law established four particular crimes of secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign organizations. Also, any expression of supporting Hong Kong's secession from China was deemed a violation of the law. Now, many of us saw this as a violation of the 1997 treaty that transferred Hong Kong governance from Great Britain to China. Under the 97 Accord, Hong Kong was to retain the same rights enjoyed under British rule for 50 years. It is the view of many the security law and the way it is being enforced is cutting deeply into those rights. Since the law's enactment, a number of things have happened that concern us at the SPJ. Apple Daily publisher Jimmy Lai was arrested under provisions of this law and remains in prison while his trial continues. Apple Daily closed soon after the police raided its offices. The same year, The Stand closed, again, out of fear of crossing the security law. Several other independent news organizations have also shut down. The Foreign Correspondents Club divested itself of the Human Rights Press Award in 2022. Some say, again, out of concern of running afoul of the law. But on the bright side, there is still a window for independent news outlets. And this year, the Hong Kong Free Press is celebrating 10 years of independent journalism in the community. With me to talk about the past 10 years and the future is Free Press founder and editor Tom Grundy. Tom, thank you very much for taking the time to be with me today.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate you're wearing our supporter t-shirt. Absolute fashionista, rocking it very well today with the logo, everything. Very purposefully designed to be uncontroversial. All we're doing is quoting what the mini constitution says, press freedom. So I'm sure no one can argue with that either here or where you are.
Well, thank you for recognizing the shirt. This is my uniform whenever I do these events for the international community. Uh, Tom, first, in that introduction I gave, is there anything you want to add or correct from that introduction about the situation in Hong Kong?
No, you 99% nailed it. The government, of course, for balance, would say that nothing has changed and that press freedom is guaranteed amid all of this, with 1,000 journalists out of work, newsrooms raided, journalists behind bars. And I would say that it's Stand News, not the Stand News. And it was the 1997 handover, but what gave rise to that was a 1984 joint declaration. So it was all arranged, in the 80s, I suppose. Other than that, you absolutely nailed it. That's pretty much the situation now, although, it's in flux and it changes really week by week, let alone month by month. We have a very comprehensive press freedom timeline that we have kept every blow really for the last 5 years, if you look it up on our website. So, but those are the basics. And yeah, thank you for the intro and the summary.
Okay. So now, even with this law looking over your shoulder, uh, a lot of news organizations fail just because they're a bad economic model or there's not a market for what they're doing. How has the Hong Kong Free Press survived for these 10 years?
Yeah, the questions have gone from how long have you got to how the hell are you still here? And that's not just the politics. Just as you say, we are battling everything that the media industry in the US and everywhere else is battling. I know you have your hands full politically too, but whether it's the threat to AI and your Google referrals most recently, or just the ongoing financial existential crisis of finances, which is why I was reluctant to get into this, when I was an undergraduate. I'm 42 now. We face all of that. But then on top of it, you have this, what many criticize as being vague and broad national security legislation, of which it was just updated. We've got a 2024 locally legislated national security law, as well as the 2020 version that's just seen its 5 year anniversary. Um, and, the list of sensitive topics seems to ever grow. It was once considered relatively simple in China that you've got Tibet, Taiwan, and the Tiananmen crackdown. On top of that, we have to think about and navigate sensitive topics such as Hong Kong independence, calls for blank or protest votes, dissidents abroad, and those who have got bounties on their heads. And if you think there's safe topics like LGBT rights or the environment, well, this has become spicy as well. Pretty much anything, really. It takes a lot to try and understand what is acceptable and what is not. So,
Mhm.
as to our survival, well, I guess, how long have you got? I mean, I would hope to think that our strict impartiality has got something to do with it, but we are also suffering everything that everyone else in the Hong Kong media is getting, or some low-key version of it, whether that's, threats, harassment, and or government scrutiny from different departments. You name it, we have not been immune to it just because I'm a foreigner, or that we're in English, or that I'm a permanent resident that doesn't need a visa. All of these things we thought might keep us safe, and others did. That's kind of been unraveling. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm blessed to have got to 10 years. I don't know whether we have 10 weeks, 10 months, 10 more years, or whatever. But, at the end of the day, we have made the risk assessment, as we do every day, that it is better to be in than out. There are things we can do here on the ground that we couldn't do abroad if we were to leave. So it makes sense to press on at the moment. But yeah, before I keep digressing, we can also talk about the funding model, because I do think we've got a Guardian style donation based income from about 1,000 monthly donors who donate the equivalent of 200 Hong Kong dollars. I don't know what that is in US. Um, it's about £20, €20 a month, and they've kept us going all these years. But I also have to admit we are spending double than what we're getting in, and we are battling a deficit over the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, we face the same existential stuff as everyone else
Mhm.
in media across the world. But at least compared to Asia, we're not seeing some of the safety concerns, say, that you would get in India, Philippines, some
Right.
journalists I met in Papua New Guinea, where it's a lot more straightforward, the censorship in some jurisdictions nearby, where they will come to your office and make you delete stuff. I
Right.
would I would just say that Hong Kong, it's extremely complicated in the way that it differs when we're navigating this stuff in recent years.
Well, it's that issue of navigating the difficulties and the grayness, if you will,
Yeah.
of the Hong Kong law. I remember many years ago, I would be a guest lecturer at university journalism classes in Shanghai and Guangzhou and talk about press freedom issues at the request of the professor. The students argued that the US and Western systems leave way too many gray areas. You never know when you step over the line. But they argued is they wanted a bright, clear line, how far they could go as journalists. And I think, as you're talking here, I'm realizing that Hong Kong really is that gray area. There's a very firm law, but how it's being implemented and enforced creates all this grayness. How are you dealing with that?
Hmm. Well, I can give you practical examples, and actually, journalists in China, foreign journalists, have sympathized with the case of Hong Kong, in the sense that the dust has not settled on this legislation. People are not used to it. We don't know really how to navigate things. And to be honest, you get the feeling that officials don't know as to how much gas they should be putting on. And you do get, I feel, opportunism, whether it be in some of the pro Beijing or state run press, or maybe a lawmaker here or there, who might want to kind of, make an example of some civil society group or NGO. You have the various attack dogs in the state-backed media, and yeah, everyone, even on the establishment side, I think is trying to find what the balance might be, and it's got a little clearer over time, but it's still completely unpredictable. I mean, for instance, if we have something, the example I give is there's lots of legislation around this national security project and thousands of bureaucrats involved, and billions of dollars. But I mean, I think that is one of the issues, by the way, as well, that if it's shaped like a hammer and there's all this funding, people better be coming to work each day and finding these national security risks. But if you take the flag legislation that bars people from interfering with or desecrating the Chinese flag, um, what happens if we're live streaming something like that and someone is arrested for it? Are we obliged to delete it, put a disclaimer? Can we show that? It's all within the context of normal news reporting. So one would hope that, it's business as usual. But so, at least for an alibi, I will go about trying to clarify for my team as these rules come in what it means for us. So I will email the police, the judiciary, the Department of Justice. I will ask lawyers. The authorities will say, no one is above the law. Everyone must obey the law. You must adhere to the relevant rules and regulations. When I ask, is it legal to report this stuff or show video? And lawyers will tell you, well, there's no test cases. And to be safe, I recommend you don't really do journalism because it's all in flux and it's not really common law. So better not risk it. Unless you've got in-house lawyers, they're not going to really recommend that you press on. So it really falls upon the shoulders of a few top editors of independent news media to kind of work it out. But at least I've made efforts here to try and understand that. And to just give you an example from today, we are interviewing the outgoing American Consul General Gregory May. He's going up to Beijing. The gloves are off in terms of the government criticizing him and his tenure. But to our surprise, we have an exclusive on our hands, unfortunately. I don't celebrate it, in that no other media are going to be doing an exit interview with him, which is a very normal thing in Hong Kong when a top official, a diplomat, a foreign representative leaves the city. You have a bit more of a frank sit down with them and off they go. And certainly, of course, we will approach the government as usual for their response. That's actually why we're sitting on the story for now. But no one is doing it this year. And this comes, days after schools have been told that they need to be careful about certain events. And some schools have taken that to mean events involving Independence Day in the US consulate that they've been having difficulties, doing their community events with. So this is just the day-to-day kind of what I mean by navigating those red lines. And some things will kind of be firmed up and there'll be some sort of like collective um, sort of consensus that
Mhm.
it seems that we cannot be interviewing wanted dissidents abroad. Those exiled Hong Kong dissidents, of whom there are a million Hong Kong dollar bounties on their heads. That is a kind of obvious one, and lawyers have said that, and officials have made it a bit more clear that any kind of contact with them, even from their families, they have been arrested for, sending money back and forth, is kind of clear.
Right.
But what I would say the bottom line for us is we can generally get the daily hard news out. We can still report those stories about the Chinese dissidents abroad, or even the sensitive topics I just listed for you. If it's happening in Hong Kong, we'll find a way of doing it. I can talk about how, but when it's things happening abroad with those dissidents, or if it's our opinion section, which is very difficult, very spicy. We have journalists, who have gone to trial over these things. And
Right.
if it's features where we have to be very selective, then it's a different story. We're not going to have an opinion piece, from yourself or someone in Brisbane or London who can spout off, and we shoulder the responsibility for it. They kind of have to be in Hong Kong, and to be honest, no one wants that job. We're down
Right.
to a couple of opinion writers, and they're foreigners.
Right.
So that's pretty spicy, the features and opinion. But the daily hard news, we just about muddle through and get it out.
Yeah. Um, you were talking about your financing earlier and your general operations. Um, if people go to your website, hongkongfp.com, you have this whole section there being very transparent about not only your financing, but your operations, your code of ethics, your affiliations. Can you talk a little bit about why this transparency is so important to you?
I think we saw it coming a mile off 10 years ago that, okay, oftentimes if you look at, say, Ai Weiwei in China, the artist, they went over went after him over tax. And there's a lot of suspicion when it comes to the finances, quite rightly so, when many are run by billionaires, in the US and elsewhere, or huge conglomerates or umbrella companies, or rich Chinese business people in Hong Kong own a lot of the media landscape, as does, say, Alibaba, which was founded by the richest Communist Party member. So there's lots of, they're state backed or state funded. There's a lot of reason to be suspicious when it comes to the background, the funding and the ownership of media, especially where I'm sitting. So we just wanted to be as transparent as possible. And certainly in Hong Kong, probably in Asia, I haven't really seen anything as transparent in the world, to be honest. Every year since our founding, you can see every cent, how we've spent it, how we raised it, and a very comprehensive annual transparency report. Because if you're a donor, you want to know it's being well spent, and 94-ish% of our donations are just of our income, sorry, is direct donations, a bit of advertising money on top of that. And almost all of our outgoings, I think 70 something percent, is literally just paying Hong Kong journalists. And you got the office and web and things like this on top of that. And you can see it plain to see. So if there are any complaint, I occasionally, you are USAID, you are NED, you are this and that
Right.
and the other. You can see, we are ahead of you with nonsense and criticism.
Well,
Likewise, we have
you
a
you may,
collection.
I just wanted to, while you're on the finances here, we have this whole issue of the tax office, the revenue office,
Yeah,
doing an audit of not only the free press, but I understand people affiliated with it and a number of other independent journalists, including the president of the Hong Kong Journalists Association, whom we
yeah.
had recently here for an interview. Uh, how are you reacting to this kind of government
We've
pressure?
meticulously, you know, on the front end, you see our transparency reports. On the back end, I have meticulously recorded every salary payment, invoice, coffee, and taxi journey you can imagine. And to be honest, the tax office are having a time finding any discrepancy. Although I'm sure there are unknown unknowns, as Donald Rumsfeld once put it, and things as a one man band. I could have messed up over the years. That's my only fear, really. Because we are facing scrutiny, often from multiple government departments, that really a huge conglomerate should expect. We're really the cost of the tax we even pay each year, and we've always paid in full and on time, outpaces the actual cost of investigating a company, in supposedly the freest economy in the world, which has a turnover of a few million Hong Kong dollars. But I've been told that we've been randomly selected, which, okay, fair enough. But it seems that the entire independent news sector, all of the ones I can name of any significance, are facing them pretty much at the same time. So take from that what you will. But I have been very meticulous with this in the same way that I foresee some of the criticism when it comes to just our reporting and credibility. So we've also been collecting, if you look at the very bottom of any page of our website, all of these credibility hallmarks, whether it's the Trust Project, the Journalism Trust Initiative, ratings from Ad Fontes Media or NewsGuard, to also kind of demonstrate not just to our readers, but to the authorities and advertisers and everywhere else that we are doing, a quality job. So, we're not just saying that, we have got ethical funding and ethical journalism, and it's open and transparent. We're literally showing it as well, and winning the accolades to prove it. So we'll see. It's been over a year with the tax office. This is just one of this bureaucratic scrutiny, this administrative microscope is another quite traditional method, I would suggest, that those in civil society have faced in terms of pressure.
Right.
And we have had quite inventive um, uh, different departments who've knocked the door. There were some complaints over my dog apparently not having a license, and hot sauce that we were selling because you need a dog license in Hong Kong, and a
Right.
rabies jab. Some fundraising hot sauce. There was a false complaint seemingly over it being from an unlicensed kitchen. Again, we thought of it beforehand and made sure that was all locked down.
Yeah, I was
We had
kind
the
of
company.
upset that you only allowed that hot sauce to be sold in Hong Kong. I really wanted a couple of bottles of that.
Well, according to the relevant rules and regulations, which I emailed the Food and Environmental Health and Customs months in advance, we cannot send such foodstuffs through the post. So,
Okay.
as I said, I'm a one-man compliance department as if I'm running bloody Walmart or something back here. We are a team of 8 people, for heaven's sake. And this is meant to be the freest economy in the world. So maybe bear this in mind if one is tempted by maybe having a startup in Hong Kong, that this is entirely possible. We have had this is all in the last year. We had the company's registry randomly knock the door and inspect all of our paperwork. And again, they found nothing wrong that we'd been doing. Our company secretary had failed to tell the authorities of their own address change. And that's all they found there because, again, kind of saw this coming, unfortunately. But other news outlets, yeah, they're also facing the exact same thing at the exact same time. So in one sense, it's not personal, but I might suggest that, well, firstly, this may be done randomly, as they suggest. Okay, well, I should maybe put money on the lottery because I think we have calculated by getting some data as to how many inspections they do each year versus how many registered companies there are in Hong Kong, versus the probability of facing multiple inspections. And it is 0.000 something percent, But okay, it could be that, number one. It could be second, that perhaps there is some will to waste time, resources, energy, and money because it has cost us, to go through all this. And of course, my will to live. And there has been a price to be paid there, I'm sure. But I'm also very stubborn, so I somewhat take joy in creating the spreadsheets needed for all of this. And thirdly, there may be some desire to kind of have a bit of a poke around and see what our accounts might look like. But again, we made sure that the tax office, for instance, shouldn't need to see who our donors are. They just need to see who the amount of tax and income that we've had. So we were sure to just provide that without any names on any of the receipts or whatever. Um, so yeah, we're battling through that, as well as the financial stuff and all of the AI and everything else that everyone else is battling through at the moment too.
Hmm. Yeah. So, you said you have 8 people. Is that your full-time staff, and then you depend a lot on freelancers for the rest of your coverage? Is that kind of your?
No, we're eight people and that's it. And we put a bit of newswire up from AFP. We're all journalists. There's no donation person. There's no um, HR or accounting or anyone like that. I generally you get 5 of them who do the reporting. I've got a full-time editor, a photographer, and myself. To be honest, we have the funds for a much smaller team that's quite sustainable. We haven't really got the
Mhm.
sustainability for this number of folks, but I'm trying to rectify that literally this week with the launch of the donor benefits and making a few cutbacks, without affecting our output or our headcount too much. And we have a bit of savings from the influx we got during the protests when our traffic went up by 5 times to 5 million. And there's a lot of interest in Hong Kong. I get it. There's less interest now. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people leaving Hong Kong, our readers, and the economy is tough. So you really have to battle for every donor. So we've sought to not put up a paywall, but offer, you know, smaller kind of different benefits for people. What was your question? Sorry. Oh, our team. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of do the rest of it, whether it's the training, some of the accounting, the HR, the paying people, the website stuff, the recruitment, basically all of the fundraising, um, as well as some of the editing. Until a few years ago, I also did all of the editing, and sometimes I would write. But I was kind of gaslighting myself as to how ridiculous that was, doing two
Right.
full-time jobs, coming home and doing the management, doing the report, the editing in the day. So
Right.
glad to have a slightly bigger team, but I think we may have expanded a bit too fast. Um, but we're trying to rectify that this year.
Okay. Now, you kind of touched on this throughout our conversation so far, but what do you see the future of Hong Kong Free Press? Do you see any kind of a print operation? Are you going to stay
Oh
online?
no, no.
Um, you
I think
know,
it'd be crazy to try print and the expense of that at the moment. But I hope to be here forever, to be honest. For all its faults, it's been home for 20 years. And I think it's one of the least worst situations when really I'm comparing, to Britain. And, where else do you go? There's a bit of an equilibrium going on. Things seem to be worsening in a lot of places. But it does seem to tighten month by month, year by year. We choose to stay at the moment because we can go to the legislature, even though it's a patriots only. There's no opposition. Most are behind bars in exile, in self-exile, or have quit politics. So there's not much to see. We can go to court and bear witness, go to that Jimmy Lai trial and others in Hong Kong. There's a lot of court reporting since the protests. We were kind of urban warfare reporters getting tear gassed most of the time for a year. Now we're court reporters, and we were COVID-19 reporters before that, navigating the security law. Um, so we can also go to press conferences, and occasionally twice a year we are picked for a question, and we can actually ask a meaningful one when you can't trust the other media to do so. And if you're out of Hong Kong, you kind of lose the accuracy and nuance, because you're not breathing in the pollution, the humidity, and the political atmosphere, which we, as much as the people we report on, are affected by a lot of the time. So for these reasons, we weigh them up, and it's better to be in the now, and we would hope to continue, but we've just seen the demise a week ago of the last pro-democracy, active pro-democracy group in Hong Kong, the League of Social Democrats. In the last few weeks, we've learned that even Greenpeace and some of the green issues and some of the softer topics are becoming a lot tougher. They're having trouble booking venues and things like this. No one wants to touch them. And last month it was something else. And every 6 weeks we face some, direct or indirect hassle. So you never know. But I would like to remain here. I mean, if you do leave, it might free you up in terms of financing and different income streams you could bring online. Like, we can't do events, in Hong Kong at the moment. You can forget having grants, things like this, any kind of foreign funding or whatever. All of these things is way too sensitive, and we've never really tried. So, and you could interview people and do opinion pieces that you couldn't if you were in Hong Kong. But honestly, I think we are filling a gap, a need between Chinese and English. We're the only, truly independent English news outlet in town. Every day we're doing stories that you're just not going to read elsewhere, or I don't trust anyone else to. So yeah, we want to continue, but I can't tell you whether it's 10 days, 10 months, or 10 years. We're
mhm.
just grateful to get up each day, and sometimes that's very motivating. You feel this sense of duty and obligation. And forgive my French, but I was shitting my pants, for the first few years of security law, because I didn't know, at what stage you might get the knock at the door. One might still get that. I don't,
I don't think
I'm
you
very
were the
careful
only
of,
one at that point, too. There were a lot of people
for
very
sure.
nervous. Yeah.
And there are periods people say, oh, it seems to be settling down, and then there'll be another unprecedented event. So I don't
Exactly.
take anything for granted. I try to take that burden upon myself rather than the rest of the team to navigate that stuff, because if they start having the security law at the front of their mind and the normal journalistic tradition and the job at the back of their mind, start self-censoring and start to go crazy. So, let the editors concern themselves with, when and how and if we're going to be putting this out. And I try and ensure that the reporter is a bit more isolated from that. But of course, they feel the heat,
Mhm.
just as much. It's complicated and things are ever changing. But I just hope the authorities can see the value in having a healthy, ecosystem where they can have a channel where they can see, different viewpoints and criticism and things like this to make Hong Kong a better place because a lot of channels of traditional channels of criticism, whether it be some of the opposition lawmakers, um, or whatever, or the ballot box. There is less democratic representation in Hong Kong now. Your vote is not worth as much as it was. People become a bit more disenfranchised. Yeah, you name it. I mean, the ombudsman. You're not seeing meaningful criticism of government. So all these watchdogs and mechanisms that one may take for granted, in the US and elsewhere, they're really worth valuing and protecting because we're not seeing a lot of them function, or they're not what they were, in Hong Kong, and the press is one of them as well. So that's quite motivating for us to carry on, really.
Okay. Um, we've been on for a while now. Just one last question. Like, is there anything that you want to discuss that we haven't talked about, Jez? Is there some particular issue you'd like to bring forward?
As soon as we end this, I will think of 10 of them, but I've tried to cram in some of my usual spiel throughout some of your questions. But we do this in a month's time, it'll all be different again. So I don't know. And there are good days and bad days, but we have just seen the anniversary of the security law, the anniversary of the handover, and the 10-year anniversary of HKFP, and it's we have seen somewhat of a mini crackdown in the lead up to some of these anniversaries. So I don't know if it'll settle a bit more, or we're going to go into this new phase now that the government are talking about of tackling so-called soft resistance. And
Mm.
this is hard to define because the government themselves struggle to define it. And there is a lot of Chinese communist kind of euphemisms that we use, but this seems to be tackling, and we're seeing some of it with the green groups, things that are not really illegal, but the government does not like because they find that it is somewhat bearing opposition to the government in an unhealthy way. And how they tackle this, is perhaps with these inspections and things like that, or they're trying to find, I think, different mechanisms to stamp out what things that they don't like that. But we'll see. It's very hard to. We've done some explainers on it, but it's definitely the next big thing, probably. I think if you're a Hong Kong watcher, as to what they
Hmm.
might be tackling. Yeah, and I don't know what that means for what's left of civil society here. So we'll see. But yeah, thanks for having me. I think I got most of it out.
Well, Tom Grundy, founder and sometime editor for Hong Kong Free Press. I want to thank you very much for taking time to be with us and to talk about the issues you're facing as an independent news organization in Hong Kong.
Well, I hope you don't end up having too much in common with us over in the US. And thank you very much, with all that's going on, for your interest in the city during all these anniversaries and in HKFP, and for that amazing T-shirt. I love it. Thanks again for the support and for having me on.
Okay, Tom, there's one other question that we always try to ask people who show up at these programs. What does press freedom mean to you?
Very basically, it's to be a voice of the voiceless and to hold the powerful to account. I have to admit, if you want me to talk further on that, that a lot of media sometimes get that upside down, or we get a bit overexcited in this era of AI that machines are going to be capable of doing that. And I really don't think so. And this is absolutely the core of our mission. It's in our mission statement, and it should be at the core of any newsroom. If you find yourself punching down or comforting the comfortable rather than discomforting those in power, then you're doing it wrong.